Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us here for this meeting of community as well as cannabis industry people interested in getting some updates about cannabis. So my name is Dennis Bazanich. I'm the Deputy County Executive Officer here for the County of Santa Barbara and have been working on the policy issue of cannabis for the last almost 2 years now. So also with me today are several others of our folks. So first of all, Jackie Campbell is here. Jackie is in our Planning and Development Department, and most of you would come into contact with her if you've applied for permits, and she's going to be talking about land use permitting. With her is also Sarah Marshall and Brianna Wiley, gosh darn it, thank you, Brianna Wiley, who are also the planners that are processing your permit applications. Also with us, we'll be presenting a little bit later, Matt Maitland is from the Ag Commissioner's Department with some updates on weights and measures and pesticide enforcement related training and permitting. And then I also want to introduce Stephen Yee. Stephen has just come to work with our office, working with me, and he'll be heading up the cannabis business licensing process that we're going to get going here shortly. So Stephen's going to be our main point person on that. In the back of the room is Gina DePinto. She's our Public Information Officer for the county. So let me just check. Do we have any county staff up in the Santa Maria hearing room besides Silvio standing in the doorway there? Okay. All right. I don't see any of the county staff up there. I didn't know if Annalise was up there or not. Okay. So here's our format for today. Not going to be anything too fancy, okay? So our purpose this afternoon is really just to spend some time updating you on where we are with permitting. So we'll start off, and Jackie will be just doing a brief overview about where we are with land use permitting. Then I'll start off and we'll do a little bit on land use, on the business license process, and we'll have Matt talk at that time a little bit more about the weights and measures requirements as well as the pesticides requirements for those of you who are cultivators. I want to give you an update about what's happening with the state temporary and annual licenses, so we're all clear and on the same page when it comes to the state processes. There are some changes, including a pretty significant change that will help, I think, the industry here, that is sitting on the governor's desk awaiting signature at this point. Then we're going to talk a bit about our enforcement actions that we've been taking, some things that have been in the news and some things that you haven't heard about yet. Then we'll talk a little bit more about, and the enforcement, for those of you who haven't been a part of the conversation up to now, enforcement, we really are talking about those who are outside of the licensing and legal market. Enforcement is what we do against folks who are still living in the gray and black market. And then we'll talk a little bit about taxes, and then I really want to open up for question and answers. Hopefully there'll be answers. That's my goal anyway. There'll be answers. So, and when we go to the Q&A, just for the Santa Maria people, we're going to go to you first. And what we'll do is we'll have you approach the microphone that's up there at the little podium for the Q&A sessions. And then here we have a microphone in the back, and you're welcome to use the microphone up here in the front as well for the Q&A here in Santa Barbara. Okay. So with that, let's turn it over to Jackie at this point to give us an update on land use permitting.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming. I haven't prepared anything formal, so I just wanted to briefly go over our land use permit process. So hopefully many of you are familiar with our website that was created, and in fact recently we've migrated much of the information that was hosted on our long-range planning page to the permitting page so that everything can be found in one location for permitting if you wanted to look at the environmental impact report or any of the other Board of Supervisors documents, et cetera, that were part of the process to adopt the ordinances that have now been in effect for several months. So it's all in one website now, so hopefully everything is easy to find. We've posted some frequently asked questions up there, but as we get more and more questions from you or others, we're going to continue to amend those and add to them, so hopefully we keep a running log of the common questions that we're asked, and so you can find answers to those things that others have asked and we've already answered. We're also getting a lot of good questions, and some questions we don't have the answers to yet. So please remember that the regulations are brand new. We're one of the first in the state to be implementing the adult use regulations for cannabis cultivation in particular. So we are applying the ordinances that were adopted to the best of our ability. And as Dennis mentioned, we have 2 staff members with us here today who are processing the permits for all of the county. So this is countywide, and we're running everything out of our Santa Barbara office here. We have one planner who does all the intake appointments. That's Kimberly McCarthy, and you may have met her at our planning and zoning counter. But she's also an important person to know for when you are ready to submit your applications for any types of development, or whether it's for a consultation to ask us, what are the regulations that apply to my property? What can I do, or what kind of plans will I have to submit at the time I apply for a permit? And what kind of permit do I need? You know, we have distinctions between when a land use permit is required and when a conditional use permit is required. So hopefully many of you have participated in the development of the ordinances as they went through the review process, and so you're familiar with those terms. But if I use any terms that you're not familiar with, please raise your hand, or if I use an acronym, let me know, and I'll slow down and go back and explain anything. So to give you a snapshot of kind of where we are in terms of the volume of permits and what we've been getting, thus far, we started accepting applications in about mid-June. So it's been 3 months, and we have received, I think, 48 applications thus far, and that includes everything from planner consultations. We've gotten 36 planner consultations that we have gone through, most all of them. We try to do those pretty quickly. We have 10 land use permit applications we've received, and these are countywide. We also have 1 combination conditional use permit and development plan that we received up in the Tepiscay Canyon area. So we've gotten a good number of applications, and we've approved 1 land use permit thus far. Just last week, we approved our first land use permit for a small nursery facility in the Goleta area. So we've just entered the very first appeal process, and we'll see if anybody appeals the permit or not, and whether the staff level decision to approve that permit is appealed to the Planning Commission. That would be the chain of appeals. We have another land use permit that will probably be ready to approve this week as well. So it's taken a little bit of time, but there's a lot of requirements that go into those permits, and you know, it's important that we make sure we have all the plans that we need, and we've reviewed the water well information. That seems to be something that's very important to our review process. What are the number of employees? What's the transportation demand management that's going to occur, like especially during harvest season? Or is there adequate parking for the employees, or is there a shuttle system to get employees to the sites? So when you're thinking about preparing your land use applications and bringing them in, please recognize that these are the kinds of questions that we need to answer to neighbors and to the public, because even on this very small land use permit I just mentioned that we approved last week in the Goleta area, was an indoor nursery. What was the square footage of it? It was, yeah, 2,400 square feet indoor in an existing building in a Ag 2 zone district, a rural area. We had 3 inquiries from neighbors, some who wanted to come in and look at the plans. So just letting you know that there is a heightened level of review. It's not like standard land use permits that we have typically processed in the past for a residence or an addition or something like that. So that's why we need you to really prepare those plans well, make sure everything's drawn to scale, make sure everything's accurate, and give us the best plans and the best information that you can, so that we can give you the best feedback and help you through that process. So I don't want to go a whole lot more into the process unless people have specific questions. If you want to hold them till the end, Dennis, but I don't want to take up too much time from the other presentation materials that we want to give you today. I'll be back up here to talk to you about enforcement. While we have this permitting aspect of what we do, a lot of our time is also spent on the enforcement front. So we'll come back to that later, but we have the P&D intake mailbox and voicemail box where you can call and leave questions. You can email me, or you can email to Brianna and or Sarah, and we will try to get back to you as quickly as we can with any questions on your permit application questions, get you answers on your permit application questions. And you know, basically just try to stay in communication and help people through the process. There's just mentioned one other step that has come up and has taken some time in the process too for the land use permits, is the requirement for Agricultural Preserve Advisory Committee review. So for the properties that are subject to Williamson Act contracts, the Ag Preserve Advisory Committee meets just once a month, and we need to have applications in advance, a couple weeks in advance of that meeting to get you on the next agenda. So just keep in mind as you look at the timing of when you want to come in with your applications that there are these other steps that we have to go through to make sure we get everybody who needs to review the permit the opportunity to review the permit and get you the information and feedback so that we can keep you on track going through that process. Is it good, Dennis, or is there any other major parts I've left out? Good? Okay. Thanks. I'll be back.
Thanks, Jackie. That's really, really helpful. So let me ask just by show of hands real quick, how many people here are involved in the cannabis industry at this point? How many are interested neighbors, community members? Okay, very good. Yeah, me too. Okay, good. All right, I just wanted to see who I was predominantly talking to. So, all right, so industry people, community people, tune out for a second. Industry people, we need to have a conversation. So the conversation is this. Right now, about 40% of the folks who are operating with temp licenses have even come to see Jackie for permits. 40%. Your temp licenses are expiring on around December 31st. They might be extended a little bit after that. So we need to have a conversation about what's going on there. Now, maybe all you guys are going to grow and be done this year and you're out because you don't want to do this anymore. That's cool. I get it. But if you're planning on continuing, I'm kind of curious, and maybe we can talk about this during public comment, about what's going on. Because, frankly, I'm a little disappointed that at this point in the ballgame, after the pressure y'all put on us to come to really good policy decisions, which I think we did, y'all were in the room, why we're at 40% of the industry having put in permits. That's a concern. So we'll talk. Let's just put that aside over there. But I want to have an honest conversation with what's going on here, because I'm a little bit. Well, let's talk about it later. So part of what we talked about during the process of developing the cannabis permitting and licensing was you had to get your land use permit first, okay? Then you had to get your cannabis local business license second, and then you would use those pieces to go to the state to get your state license, right? And in the meantime, we knew we had these temp licenses with the clock ticking, right? And some of those things. So as we talk now just about the local business license, we've just had the first permit approved this last week. Looks like another one maybe this week. So now we're going to be ready. So our goal on the cannabis business licensing is that we, as many of you may know, we went and we've purchased the licensing software from Acela, which is the same company that the state uses, is actually the same software that planning and development already uses. We bought their cannabis licensing package. It's a cloud-based system, and we have to do some configurations. There's not a lot of setup time, but there is some setup time. Our goal is to at least have the public portal, which is how you apply to us for your local business license, to have that open the 1st of October, okay? So that's our goal, is to have that cannabis business license portal, just at least the front end open. What it does, just so you know, in the background that we'll set up later on, we'll do an internal workaround, but it'll auto-route all the documents to the right people to do the review of the various security plan, odor mitigation plan, energy plan, all those things. It'll auto-route all those documents. That should be transparent to you guys, and we don't want to hold you guys up from getting those business licenses. So our commitment, we're working with Acela this week, Stephen and I are working with Acela this week to get that cannabis business licensing portal for Santa Barbara County open by the 1st of October. Okay, if we can get it done faster and we flip a bunch of switches, we'll get it on. But we'll get an announcement out to you as soon as that's done. So that's really where we are with business licensing. All of the plans that you need to submit are available in the form of a checklist on the cannabis website. I hope you're using that as a resource. It's got a checklist under licensing that's very complete about what you're going to need to do. In the next 2 weeks, we're going to be uploading a series of templates for what those plans look like. So what a template for your security plan, a template and a calculation sheet for the energy conservation plan. We've got a whole bunch of templates that we want you to use because 2 things. One, it'll make it easier. You don't have to create something from scratch. I always have writer's block, and so I always want something where I can at least fill in the blanks. Secondly, it'll help our review process because then it'll come as a standard form that we're used to reviewing, and so we'll be able to really quickly be able to determine whether or not that plan is complete or not for consideration for licensing. Okay? So I think hopefully that will help streamline that part of the process. A critical component of that, Matt, get ready to stand up. A critical component of that business licensing is how you treat both the pesticides as well as your weights and measures. So I want to bring Matt up here at this point just to talk about what's going on with weights and measures and pesticides enforcement as we go out.
Thanks, Dennis. Okay, let's talk about weights and measures first. So as you know, in the state regulations, it's in the Business and Professions Code, any type of commercial weighing devices, those are the scales you're using, have to be certified, tested, and sealed by the county weights and measures department. So that's any scales that you're using for track and trace, processing, packaging. Basically, any type of scale you use has to be legal for trade. Okay, so we're getting a lot of phone calls right now. Is this a legal for trade scale? And that means whether or not is it weights and measures approved. So if you have questions on that, you can go to the CDFA website. You can go to the Division of Measurement Standards website, and they have a list. And what most people are doing, though, they're just calling our office. If you give us the brand name and the model number, we can search it for you. Okay? Because that's when we go onto your site, that's one thing. That's the first thing we check if it's legal for trade. If it's not, we're not going to approve it. Okay? So one of the requirements is a weights and measures permit. So that's required locally. And I have some registration forms on the back table, and I have some business cards. So feel free afterwards to grab one. If I do run out, you can check our website, the Agriculture Commissioner's website, or you can call our main office, which is 805-681-5600. And the weights and measures permit, that's required to have all your scales permitted by the county. And if you're doing any packaging, another aspect of weights and measures, we check your packages. We check the labeling requirements and also the net contents. So if you're packaging a gram package or a 10-pound package wholesale, those all have to be verified by us. And this is going to be a yearly inspection, both your scales and any packages for laboratories, manufacturers, okay, places like that. Okay, so so far we've issued about 15 weights and measures permits. So I know a lot of people still need it. So, hopefully we'll get that going soon. All right, and we are accepting permit fees right now because we have our local charter bank. So there's no reason why you shouldn't be getting your weights and measures permit right now.
If we have one, do we need to get the separate one?
Call me about that later, I'll have to look at that. Because you may need a separate permit. Depends how your business is set up. Because if you're a regular nursery, but then you have a cannabis part of your nursery, so it all depends. That's a good question. Okay, so that's your weights and measures aspect of what we do in our department. The other thing is,
So you don't need your land use entitlement before you get your weights?
you can get your weights and permit right now because we're accepting permit fees. We can deposit it, so you don't have to wait. Okay, because I know with Cannabis, they're asking you about your weighmaster license and weighmaster permit fees, and we weren't able to do it months ago, but now we are. Okay, so we're working closely with Cannabis just like the county is. All right, so pesticide. Also, if you haven't got your operator ID number, your OIN, make sure you call our office up, make an appointment to get that. That's if you're using any pesticides, and we can give you information on that. And if you look at the Department of Pesticide Regulation website, they have a list of all active ingredients that are broad enough to use, and then they have a red list, which is not. You can't use any of those products. But you want to make sure you contact our department because we're the local enforcement branch of DPR. Okay? So you want to make sure you get that. We've already issued about 40 operator ID numbers, so I'm sure there's more out there, more of you guys out there that need it. And coming up in October, and I just got the list from Dennis, so we're going to be emailing everyone that we have registered in the county. We're going to be doing pesticide training and outreach classes. Okay, because we know you guys are a new industry, you don't have a lot of training and education in pesticides. So we're going to be doing 2 in the North County in Santa Maria, and then we're going to be doing 2 classes in October in Carpinteria. Okay, so when you get that email, the classes are limited to about 20 people each class. And we're going to be doing 1 class in November and 1 class in December. And it's probably going to be a 2-part class. Okay, so we're going to go over everything you need to know about pesticides. Okay, because just remember, we're also going to be doing site visits also. Because you have to follow the same regulations with pesticides than the regular grower industry, than any other industry. It's the same thing. There's no exemptions, the same laws. Okay? So if you have any questions, we can wait till afterwards.
So one group I don't want to leave out are the folks that are in the coastal zone. So a little bit of update about what's happening in the coastal zone. Maybe just for context real quick, most people realize that when we pass new land use ordinances, anything that affects property within the coastal zone, the California Coastal Commission requires us to submit those ordinances for certification. We have done that as of, I think it was May we submitted our package of both the coastal zoning ordinance as well as the cannabis business licensing ordinance, since both of them have components that address some of the concerns in the coastal zone. Staff is looking at those now. We don't have a firm estimate about when the Coastal Commission will take those up. I'll just say this, there's a meeting in October, there's another meeting in December. You get where I'm going, right? So we're probably, I'll just say this, I'd love it if they took us up in October. I'm not hopeful. And so that would mean December. And so part of that then for us locally means that we have folks that the Board of Supervisors authorized us to pick a path that would allow them to be in a planner consult process, and in doing that we'd be able to stay silent on their application for any state annual license that they might apply for. As the temp licenses begin to decline, the idea was then annual licenses would move into effect, and they would we would be able to stay silent. About 3 months ago, a little wrench got thrown into that really brilliant idea we had as the Board of Supervisors and as staff. And the little wrench was that the staying silent for 60 days, which would then allow an annual application to be deemed complete, was actually not how CDFA, the licensing authority affecting everybody who's a nursery licensee or a cultivator, that was not how they interpreted it. Instead, they said, well, it's not a complete application and won't be deemed a complete application to the state until all of CEQA is done. And in order to get CEQA done, you have to have your land use permit and your business license in Santa Barbara County. So now we have catch-22. But only yeah. So in that regard, we were hence stuck with not being able to have CEQA without the land use permit. And so it led this whole thing of the consult being a problem, but we knew we also couldn't move forward with just approving, your license applications if you're in the coastal zone. So we were talking with CDFA, and then we began to talk with some of our other counties who are also coastal counties. And with the help of the California State Association of Counties, we brought a piece of legislation in the closing days of the legislative session that creates a new type of annual license called a provisional annual license. And the provisional annual license is something that will be available to any applicant for an annual license that has everything else done for the state's purposes except for CEQA. Does that make sense? I see nodding going on here. Everybody in Santa Maria is nodding their head. That all made sense to them. The one guy's yawning. CEQA usually makes me feel that way too. So this provisional license, what will end up happening is that if you've submitted an annual application, it's sitting there waiting to be complete. Oh, I should point out a really important fact about that piece of legislation. The legislature approved it on the last day of the legislative session. It's sitting on the governor's desk right now awaiting signature. That's a key thing, right? So it's not officially law yet. The governor has until the end of September to sign it. I will say this, that we, the group of counties, as well as the California State Association of Counties, we did talk to the governor and to the administration, and they understood what we were doing, and they gave us their little blessing thing, that they do. So I think we're okay, but it's not official yet. We're still waiting for that. Now, how does that fit? So as your temp licenses, which are the legal authority for the state temp licenses, expires on December 31st, 2018. Last conversation I had with CDAFA is they plan on giving anybody who's got an active temp license one more 90-day extension on the last day of the year. That's their plan. It's up to their authority, and it's their discretion to do that, but that's what their plan is. So that would buy you some time until approximately mid-March on your temp licenses that you would be able to stay in compliance. Remember, our goal here in Santa Barbara County is keeping people in compliance until they don't want to be in compliance anymore, and then we have enforcement. So this is our way. This would be a pathway to keep you in compliance so we don't have to do enforcement. All right? So with that then, as you then would file for an annual license, and this is particularly true for you in the coastal zone because you have no other path in order to continue to operate, and the board authorized you to be in this consult process, is that if we get to a point and your temp licenses are about to expire, CDFA is going to put you down one of two paths. If you have CEQA done, which means you've got your permit, and you've submitted that with your application for an annual license, you get to go the regular old vanilla flavored annual license, all right? If you don't have your land use permit at that point and your temps are about to run out, you go down the newfangled flavor of a provisional license if the governor signs it, okay? So we've got some options available for you if you're doing that. If you're a new entity, your only pathway, because you don't have any ability to be operating now, if you're a new entity, you're just trying to get your permit and get your business license done so you can apply to the state and get your state license, all those pieces, right? So if you're a new entity, and we have several of you here in this room, several of you watching on the internet, several of you in Santa Maria, you can continue to operate, but your goal is to try to get those permits. And that's a bit about my anxiety about why we've only got 40% of you folks in the process, in the pathway now. Because we're going to run out of time. We are going to run out of time. If you don't want to be in business, I get it. I'm not about wanting you, I don't care. I'm agnostic, you know that. I like you guys, but I'm agnostic about whether you stay in business. But I will say that that's my anxiety, is we're going to run out of time here pretty quickly if you don't start getting in the path. And if you are currently operating or want to operate in a place that needs a CUP, where are you? How long is it, Susan? Oh, forever. So as my former father-in-law used to say, if you were to empty all the oceans in the world with a teaspoon, and you took all the time to empty all the oceans with a teaspoon, forever hadn't even started yet. So if it takes forever and it takes that long to empty all the oceans, you got what you got, and you got it from Susan Petrovich. It takes forever. So forever, the clock started on forever a while ago. And so if you're planning on doing a CUP, so if you're in an EDRN, if you're adjacent to an EDRN, if you got to get going. I don't know where you are. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what your plan is, but you got a problem, Houston. Okay. So on the state level, I think just to finish up the update on the state level is that we're trying to create, again, for the benefit of the industry, both here locally as well as statewide, a continued pathway toward compliance. Is that helpful for you? Okay, that we really do want people. We know that you're in the business to try to be in the business, and so we want you to be successful, but we want you to be successfully compliant too. And so we're trying to create an opportunity for that going forward. On to enforcement. We'll do questions right at the end. We're almost done. So on enforcement real quick, I think probably most of you are aware we're out. We're talking to folks. We had, probably most of you saw the press accounts that we took some action up in Tepesquay Canyon area a couple weeks ago. There is more planned. And so at this point, what I want to do is just, acknowledge residents and people from industry that have come forward with suggestions about where we might want to look for conducting enforcement activities against black and gray market. Those are very, very helpful leads for us. We've also developed a number of our own leads over the last several months, but we are working closely, and it's Sheriff's Department, it's the District Attorney, it's planning and development, it's ag, it's many of our folks are involved in that. And so we are continuing to work. And so for those of you that are from the community and you're watching this and you're concerned, we are working, and you will see more results coming from our enforcement activities in the days, weeks, and months ahead. We are firmly committed to doing this going forward, because then for you in industry, recognizing that there's an unfair competitive advantage to those who sit outside of the regulatory system, outside of the taxation system, if they're allowed to continue to operate and not pay taxes and not participate in the regulations that you all have to if you're going to stay in the legal market. So we are absolutely committed. I don't care where they go. They can go any other place if they want to do that. I'm not judging, but they're not going to do it here. That's my goal. That's our goal. All right. So I just want to be I want to be a badass about that. All right. So last thing on taxes, and we'll go to Q&A. So I think, how many of you received a mailing from our treasurer tax collector in the last few days? Okay. So a few of you, the rest of you will be getting it. So one of the things that we've identified is 96 different separate, unique operations that are operating currently in this current quarter in the county that are accruing a tax liability as of July 1st. Those taxes are due on October 1st, the day after the quarter. They're quarterly tax, 4% for cultivation, 1% for nurseries, 3% for manufacturing, yada, yada, okay? You have to pay those taxes. They're due on October 1st, but you have to pay them by October 31st. You can pay in check, you can pay in money order, you can pay in cash. Downstairs to the treasurer's department on the first floor. When you get off the elevator, you turn right. It's the door straight ahead. You walk in there, and they will take your money. Okay? Happily. The important part of that is that your continued ability to maintain your licensing is going to be dependent upon your active participation in the taxation. Get that, how it works? So want you to stay compliant with taxes as well. That is what's funding our enforcement. And most of you want the enforcement. If you're the one who's paying the taxes, I know you also want enforcement. So it works out well for everybody. So I want to just put that plug in there. One of the things that we're beginning to recognize is that the size of some of your cash payments are going to be large. And it's a hand counting process. hand counting process, partially a hand counting process. So there's some machines involved too, a couple times, but it also involves a hand counting process. So as you do that, if everybody waits till October 31st, I'll strangle. I mean, it'll be really hard. Okay, do you hear that, Santa Maria? Waiting till October 31st to pay your taxes, bad. Long lines, okay? So we're going to continue to work on our payment systems. We promise we will continue to work on that. But just keep that in mind, especially for this first quarter. We're trying to scale the size of our staffing to match the circumstances. But be ready. So we appreciate that. And again, we'll answer any questions about taxation here at the end. Okay. So let me just check with my team. Anything else we want to say that I forgot or that's critical? Yeah, good. Thanks.
I just wanted to go over a little bit about enforcement so that everyone's aware. I'm the supervisor of the permitting program and also of the enforcement program, both countywide. And I have one planner 3, Annalise Merlot. So she is based in our Santa Maria office in Orcutt. And she's managing most all of the zoning enforcement complaints that we get for cannabis cultivation. And Sarah Marshall, who's here in our South County office, assists in the South Coast, so mostly just the Carpinteria area. So we have like 1.5 planners working on enforcement. We have a portal on our website for complaints to come in for cannabis, written complaint, and it asks if you can identify the assessor parcel, if you don't know that, the address or the owner, something that gives us a clue as to where the complaint is originating or where the cause of the complaint is. So there's places for you to fill those out and submit them to us, and then we will investigate. So, but recognize that we've got a lot of sites countywide. We get multiple complaints every day. We'll just let you know. So we're very busy in enforcement. At least half of my time, probably more, is spent in enforcement right now than in permitting. We just have that much volume of enforcement work. And it's obviously difficult. For example, in the Carpinteria area, we get complaints about odor, and it's very hard for anyone to pinpoint exactly where an odor is coming from. So it's hard for us to respond to those. Additionally, as Dennis mentioned, since our ordinances are not effective in the coastal zone, the requirement for odor abatement is not yet mandatory. So of course, people can voluntarily implement odor abatement systems, and I know that there are growers who have done so, and that is much appreciated. But we still get quite a few complaints regarding odor, particularly in the Carpinteria area. And I'm even in communication with the city of Carpinteria because they're hearing it from their residents as well. But that's why we really need those Coastal Commission actions to occur so that we can start enforcing the regulations and get the required odor abatement systems in place. So that's an important component of what's going on. Another important component of the zoning violation issues is for those properties that are in the coastal zone, when we are able to accept coastal development permits, as Dennis was mentioning, we expect we're going to get a flood of applications in. We know the Carpinteria growers are organized. They've been in for their consultations. We expect about 34 greenhouses are producing in that area. So that's a lot of volume for us to manage in what may be a very short period of time to help you get your permits and keep your state licenses active. So for those sites that do have violations that may have been identified through the consultation process, you are encouraged to come in early, come in anytime now if you want to correct any existing violations that are on those coastal zone properties. So we can give you a permit. For example, let's say somebody has expanded and there's more greenhouses than were originally permitted by the county 20 years ago or something like that. If you know that, or we've advised you of that through the consultation process, you can start your permitting review process now to correct any violations or remove violations before we get to the opportunity to even process your cannabis permit applications. So you can help yourselves and help us because, as Dennis mentioned, we expect we're going to get a lot of applications at one time as soon as we open up that CDP, Coastal Development Permit Application process. It can help us and help yourselves by addressing those violations early, one way or the other, either coming in and asking for permits for them or to eliminating the violations so that there is no permit required. Similarly, in the inland areas, We can process your permits now, but if there are violations, again, you want to get them cleaned up. You're going to have to clean them up either concurrent with your land use permit application for the cannabis operation or prior to your land use permit for cannabis operations so that we can approve a permit. Similarly, we've had an issue come up a couple of times on sites we've looked at already regarding lot legality. Do you have a legal lot? And that's another important issue. And again, it takes some time. A few other things to keep in mind. If you've recently bought a property that is subject to a Williamson Act contract, is in our agricultural preserve program, you need to file an assumption contract with the county surveyor to make sure that the ownership on the deed matches the ownership of the agricultural preserve so that they're in concert, Williamson Act contract and the land ownership. So a few things, again, that people can be doing in advance of either our ability to accept your coastal development permit or our ability to complete your land use permit process now. I think that's all the things I wanted to say about enforcement. Dennis mentioned the one site that we had worked on in the Tepiscay area, and there was a press release issued for that. We had another site that we just had abated that had 8,000 plants planted without permits, without state license, reported by other people. Then we responded and ended up having to abate that site. So we are busy in enforcement, and we will continue to work on it. But just so you know, I recognize the need that there be a level playing field for everybody so that the people who are paying the taxes, who are going through the permit process, preparing all the plans, et cetera, that you're all on the same footing, that there isn't anybody who has an advantage one way or another. So the cases that are out there that are illegal, we'll continue to do our enforcement work. Thanks.
I want to open it up for questions. I just want to make one last note. We realize we've got a little bit of a deficit here, and I'm just letting you know that we know. So one of the things that we are continuing to try to do is entertain conversations with folks who are looking at distribution and testing in Santa Barbara County so that they are local businesses that are doing distribution and testing. We realize that we're going to have to rely on our city partners in order to probably allow that to happen because we have such few commercially and manufacturing zoned properties in the unincorporated area. And luckily, some of those city jurisdictions are kind of coming forward and talking actively with that. So just so you know, we're very conscious of the supply chain issues that given the large size, and we continue to be the largest number of licenses for cultivation anywhere in the state of California in Santa Barbara County. That hasn't changed. And in that regard, we realize that distribution and testing are going to be critical local components to that. So if you have folks that you're associated with that are considering opportunities elsewhere, I think that this might be an interesting place for them to consider. So, all right, with that, question and answers. So let me do this. Let me include Santa Maria first, and then we'll come right back here. Are there any questions for Santa Maria folks? If so, if you could approach the mic, we'd be happy to answer those. If you could state your name, that'd be great.
Hey, Lil Clary, Tepiscay Canyon. I do have one question, but first of all, I want to thank Jackie and the crew for making Tepiscay the target of the first enforcement activity. We feel very much that we have been recognized and that our issues are being addressed. Thank you. My question is, I need a clarification of the notification requirements for those who are placing or applying for a conditional use permit. Initially, when we attended planning department meetings, we were told that the CUP applicant would have to notify canyon-wide. That does not appear to be happening.
Thank you, Lil. The noticing for a conditional use permit is not done until the application is ready to go to the Planning Commission. So notices are mailed to property owners and residents within 1,000 feet of the property boundaries where the cannabis operation is proposed, and it's mailed 10 days in advance of that public hearing.
All right, thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions in Santa Maria? And what we'll do is we'll take this one and then we'll come down here to Santa Barbara and then we'll go back to we'll check back in with Santa Maria. So go ahead and give us your name. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Brian McNutt. Earlier you talked about consultations with the land use permit or the conditional use permit. I just wondered who I need to speak to about that. And then also I had a question. Are there any outlets available for assisting with filling out the state paperwork or this county paperwork, or any way I can get assistance with that?
I can answer your first question regarding assistance with the planner consultations. You can submit any questions to our P&D intake mailbox. We have a portal on our website where you can call and leave a voicemail message, or you can send in an email. And depending on the question, it will get assigned to an appropriate planner who will respond to you with an answer. When you have all of your materials together and you're ready to submit either a planner consultation or a land use permit, you need to schedule an intake appointment, and those occur only in the Santa Barbara office. And we hold them when you are ready to submit your application and you have your check or money order for the proper amount of the deposit for the review to occur. So one, you can contact through our email or voicemail, and then two, when you're ready, schedule the intake appointment also through that same email or voicemail system. And the second question had to do with estate services. It's not my area of expertise, I don't think. Dennis, did you have something to add to that? Or I wasn't clear on the question.
Filling out trying to figure out exactly which I need to fill out the land use permit or a conditional use permit. I'm just unclear on which one I'm going to need to go through to get everything situated.
Okay, now I understand better. Thank you. We have an interactive map on our website that you can look at and turn on different layers on that site that will help you understand what kind of permit is required. If you're not interested in doing that work yourself, or you're still unsure about it, again, just give us a call and leave a message or send an email, and we'll call you back and help you through that. So we're happy to give you that kind of assistance. All right?
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure. You're welcome.
All right, let's go to Santa Barbara. Susan, why don't you go first? If you could use here, maybe we could, just so they can hear it. Oh, thank you. Thanks. Just so people in North County can hear you.
So 3 quick questions, one's a two-parter. First, when will you be uploading those templates for the various reports?
We have 3 of them already done and in, so we could get those uploaded this week. I think the other ones will probably follow next week, and so we're checking on the status of those. So, yeah. Yes, energy resources, and what was the other one? The worksheet for the energy conservation plan are already up. And then we're going to have one for the site security plan. The cultivation plan you should have because it's the same one as the state. So you can just use that same cultivation plan that you submitted with any annual applications, but we can also put it on our local website as well.
Second question is, what's the name of your local chartered bank?
It's actually a federally chartered bank, and it's a big red logo with some blue highlights in it.
Oh, well,
and it ends with America.
Well, never mind if it's federal. And then my last question, my two-parter. Jackie says she's leaving when, and who's replacing her? And who is replacing her?
For those of you who don't know, I was hired on a temporary contract to help get the program started based on past experience working for the County of Santa Barbara years ago. So my contract will expire on October 25th, and at that time, P&D will hopefully have a new supervisor in the Development Review Division, and hopefully also have a Planner 3, another Planner 3 in the Cannabis program. So we The supervising planner recruitment, I think, opened last week. It's open right now, so if anybody is qualified and would like to be a supervising planner with the Planning and Development Department, they are welcome to apply. And then we're going to go out for a new Planner 3 recruitment very soon.
Yeah, just give us your name and...
Jay Higgins, 2 questions. One concerning building and safety requirements. Would you make somebody available for us at the building counter or maybe a handout so we can better understand the difference between commercial building codes and ag building? And I ask that in the context of hoop or regulations, where right now any amount of artificial lighting inside a hoop structure pushes us towards a greenhouse, which is, how do we understand what the building and safety code requirements are for greenhouses? Not greenhouses, but greenhouses.
All right, so Jay's question about greenhouses. We do have a point of contact in the Building and Safety Division. That is Mary McCaffrey, and she's situated here in our South Coast office. So she's available to answer questions about building code requirements for cannabis operations, whether it's a greenhouse or something else, electrical permits, any of those kinds of building code questions should go to Mary McCaffrey.
Great, thank you. Second question, with respect to the coastal conundrum, I guess. Did you consider allowing CDPs in to be submitted before Coastal makes action, I guess, in December? Because conceivably there could be a tolling agreement with an applicant that says, we realize, PSA streamlining timelines don't apply here until Coastal Commission takes action, but that would give you the chance to do a review under CEQA for the project. Is that...
We did consider that, and we decided no. We did not want to accept coastal development permit applications until those coastal ordinances are in effect. But one workaround could be an application for a pre-application. That, in the context, I know an application for a pre-app, but a pre-application would allow somebody to submit, basically, if you wanted to submit your fencing plan, your odor abatement plan, your transportation demand management plan, we could review those in the context of a pre-application.
But could you then issue some kind of a CEQA determination on a pre-app?
No.
Okay.
No. But to get back to the CEQA question, so for the first land use permit that we approved last week, with the help of County Council, we were able to use a combination CEQA guidelines section 15162, 15168, 15164 letter. And once we get to the end of the appeal period and we're ready to issue that permit, we'll post the notice of determination with the clerk of the board for that. So that was something that we did work out with the state that would suffice. They were not allowing us to rely solely on the program EIR that the county adopted for the regulations, but said that we had to do site-specific analysis for each individual cannabis application. So we now at least have a template created that we can use for future land use permits, and at least now we have a process going forward for CEQA review of individual applications, relying on that program EIR, but not solely on the program EIR.
So those are CEQA exemption statute numbers. Could you give me the...
15162, 15164, and 15168. It might be an A or a B or a C on the 15168, I don't remember, but those 3 sections taken together allowed the county to make a finding that the program EIR is adequate for the specific permit that we approved, because it had no additional water demand, no additional employees, et cetera. We had all the languages in there. We referenced the Class 1 findings that were overridden, et cetera. So that's our approach right now to address the CEQA question.
You have a new standard CO, conditions of approvals?
We approved conditions of approval for the first permit. Again, it was a very small nursery permit, so it might not be the most exemplary or the most common of all the types of permits we're going to see. We've only had inquiries for 3 nurseries thus far, so it's definitely in the minority of the types of permits we're seeing more commonly. So we're going to continue to work on our standard conditions, but we've at least gotten the basis of them adopted or approved with County Council and applied to the first permit.
Thank you.
Let me just check with Santa Maria. Are there any new questions in Santa Maria? Otherwise, we'll keep going down here. We have some other folks queued up, but I just want to check with Santa Maria. Okay. All right, let's go.
Hi, Tracy Trotter. Dennis, 2 questions. One is, I've been stalking you for a couple of years now. You know I'm a manufacturer. You know a distributor. Am I greenlit? That's the first question. When can I put in my applications? The second question.
For land use permit yesterday, actually June 4th.
Okay, so I can move ahead.
June 4th, you were able to move ahead.
Perfect.
We were pretty clear, I thought.
Okay.
But if not,
I just want to make sure. Second question is I believe you're talking about that beautiful little bank that accidentally burned in 1969 in IV. Are all branches working with us or just one branch?
I will not commit of any bank to taking money from you. We had, and I don't mean you, I mean us, all of us. It had to do a lot with our existing business relationship with said bank, and the treasurer tax collector's personal relationship with that bank. And I think you will find that to be true in many other circumstances, that depending on your personal relationship with a banker, they are able to do that. It really is not so much about the brand name on the outside of the bank. It really has to do with your personal relationship with the banker and how you present yourself. We were upfront, we were transparent, we told them what we were doing, and after several weeks of negotiation on the part of Treasurer Tax Collector Harry Hagan, he was successful at getting us the opportunity to deposit cannabis-sourced revenue into a separate bank account.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lisa Bedrogi, and first I want to thank staff, the county-wide, and all your efforts to develop a process and a program that's really, truly going to help our agricultural community and our communities at large. So great job, and I definitely feel the pinch and the concern and the anxiety over getting all of these things, all of our ducks in order in a timely manner, and have learned a bit today. So thank you for having this workshop. I appreciate the efforts of our county and other counties to lobby the state for this provisional opportunity, and I'm curious if, as we move forward, we might consider some additional provisional steps, because as we all know, that CEQA step can be huge, particularly in the CUP process. So I don't know, are you welcoming, inviting more conversation around that, how we might, again, be able to create some additional flexibility for people who, maybe newbies coming in, new entities, and they need to get started and could get stuck in a lengthy CEQA review.
So Lisa, I think the idea behind the provisional, by the way, it's going to be good for 12 months from the date of issuance. So just to kind of, as you begin to think through strategizing and timing wise, hopefully that helps. I think all of us, and when I mean us, the other 4 large cannabis counties that work together with CSAC on this piece of legislation, are really hoping that we will have resolved our local CEQA issues before that year is out, so that people seamlessly move into a regular annual license at the end of that provisional license period. And I think that's doable. It's going to take effort on all of our parts, but I think that gives us a pathway forward to keep people compliant. And that was really the full intent and purpose, was to provide a compliance pathway for folks here locally as well as statewide. I think I would be, it's way too early to think about what we would do alternatively if we were still at a pinch point later on. I would say this: I don't know that we have too many more chits to play in the legislative arena, and so I wouldn't count on some future, Hail Mary pass being successful.
Sure.
I'll just say it that way.
Right.
So we just want to be very strategic about how we play those legislative chits as we go forward.
Absolutely, and thank you so much. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense, and I appreciate knowing we have basically 12 months within that window. Just a couple other quick questions. You mentioned the Coastal Commission certification will probably bring on an onslaught of the coastal zone operators. What's the timing of that certification? Are we doing that before the end of the year? And what's...
So Diane Black, the interim director for planning, do you want to talk to it? Yeah.
The Coastal Commission staff is working on our our application submittal to them. So it was called complete back in June, which was a good sign on our first submittal. Diane and Dan and I met with Coastal Commission staff just last week or the week before to go over the ordinances and trying to answer all the questions they have, and did a follow-up phone conversation at the end of last week. So we're making progress with them on their review of our application. As Dennis had said, we were hopeful to get on the agenda in October. They have not given us any word that it will be on the agenda in October. If it's not October, our next hope is December. So we still are hopeful that it would happen in December, which means that the Coastal Commission hearing, they meet once a month at different places throughout the state, that in December, if it's not October, then they would hear a public hearing and consider our ordinance. They would take public comments at that meeting, et cetera, and often what happens is they will have suggested modifications. So they may, in general, agree with the ordinance that way we've written it, but they might want us to modify this or that. Maybe they don't think we should allow open field agriculture in Ag 2 zones, or whatever it is that they want to modify relative to what the Board of Supervisors acted upon. And so then it becomes an iterative process. So if they take action, they send it back to the county, and the Board of Supervisors can accept or reject those suggested modifications. And if we accept them, then we send that back to their director and say, we're all good with this, and then the regulations become effective after that. So there is still a bit of an iterative process after the Coastal Commission hearing, but the hearing is the big part to get done. And if we can work out any questions or any conflicts between the existing adopted ordinance from the Board of Supervisors and what the Coastal Commission staff recommendations are, we'll try to do that in advance so that we can get through in one hearing and as smoothly as possible. So we'll keep everyone posted when we get a hearing date, but my hopes for October diminish as each day passes, but my hopes are high for December at the latest.
Okay, thank you. And just one other thought, question, suggestion with the Ag Preserve Advisory Committee becoming more impacted. Is there any opportunity or thought that they might meet twice a month?
Probably not likely. I think we had an anomalous situation last month where we had 14 items on the Ag Preserve agenda. I mean, even in August when we had maybe 3 cannabis applications on that agenda, the total was only 5 items or something on the agenda. So I think for some reason September was anomalous and we had 14. Even still, they got through it in a pretty timely manner. I think, after having gone through it a couple times now and our staff is more familiar with it, that we'll have a more streamlined process going forward. So I think it's going to get better and be more streamlined. I'd be very surprised if they were willing to add another meeting, but not up to me.
Thank you so much.
So I just want to recognize P&D staff, and including Jackie and others, Dan and others that were mentioned. They really are being proactive with the Coastal Commission. They meet regularly anyway on a variety of issues that we have before them. They're not just sitting there passively waiting for them to throw something on the agenda. They're really actively trying to court and identify what the questions and issues are ahead of that. So it is a proactive process for them. So go ahead, Liz.
Hi, my name is Liz Rogan. I also wanted to echo the comments of the woman ahead of me, but thank you. You guys have done a phenomenal job. Obviously, Santa Barbara County we hold so many cultivation licenses, and we couldn't have done that without everybody here. So thank you, honestly. And the website's amazing, and thanks for having these things to answer our questions as we move forward. My question today is just about the pesticides. I think, Matt, you mentioned about the site visits. You said it was I was wondering what's the frequency of that. You did also mention that there's going to be classes about that in the future, and I wondered when they are and where will that info be posted?
Right, so we are doing training classes on pesticide use and enforcement regulations. We're doing this because we know the industry is new, and we figured there's a lot of lack of information out there in the industry. So with the email list I got from Dennis, we should be hopefully doing an email blast this week. Okay, so hopefully we have the correct email addresses. I do have business cards on the back table, so feel free to grab one, contact us also. Okay, so, and you're welcome to bring 2 to 3 people. Okay, the classes are limited to 20. So we figure maximum per business would be maybe 3. If you have a lot of workers, you know, in your business, we can make special arrangements for a private, you know, group class. So we're planning on having 2 classes in Santa Maria in October and 2 classes in Carpinteria in October. And then 1 class in November, 1 class in December. And it'll probably be a series of 2 classes. Okay, the first part of the class will be about weights and measures requirements. Second part, which will probably be about half hour. And then the rest of the first and second class will be all pesticide training, because there's a lot to go over, from what is a pesticide, rules and regulations, worker protection, safety. So there's a lot of material to go over. Okay. What was the other part of your question?
You mentioned the site visits.
Site visits, yeah.
What
So
kind of
During
frequency?
the training classes, we're going to go over site visits. So site visits are basically, we're going to go to your business, look and see how you're handling your pesticides, your storage compartment requirements, because there's requirements for handling and storing pesticides. Also requirements for worker protection and safety. So part of the training that we're going to be providing, we're going to do site visits. Site visits can range from a minimum of once a year. If we get a complaint, we can go to your site also and do a site visit there. We recently did, which we mentioned earlier, Tempest-Gay, there was a visit we did with planning and development. We found a lot of violations like illegal pesticide use. Illegal storage, you know, because you're supposed to store your pesticide in a safe, locked up storage compartment. You know, that's to protect not just your workers, but also the environment. So part of the Ag Commissioner's job is to protect the environment. So that's where the pesticide laws and regulations come into effect.
Okay.
Okay, so just be aware, site visits, you know, we have authority to come onto your property anytime.
And what kind of enforcement would that entail if they were to find that you were not
So the
compliant?
enforcement ranges. It could be from a notice of noncompliance, you know, to outreach, education, to administrative civil penalty, all the way to a civil penalty with the district attorney's office. Okay?
Okay. And then one last question is, obviously in Carpinteria, as in a small area with mixed crops, such as avocados, with the spraying and, you know, sometimes there's pesticide drift. Is that something you guys will also be addressing?
We've already addressed some complaints about that. So any complaints, if there's any complaints about pesticide that goes to the county cannabis website, that will be directed to our department. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let me just check real quick. Santa Maria, any more questions for you? Just want to check in if you have any questions or comments for the team. Okay, go ahead.
I just want to see if you could elaborate a little bit on the energy plan. I looked at the different options. One was a PG&E, one was an Edison one. Within them, they allow you to do like a 50% or 100%. Is the county requiring a 100% solar plan, or can I do, what is required, I guess?
It's Amber?
Autumn.
Sorry. Autumn. The energy conservation plan is written in 2 ways. It comes in at the time of the business license application, so it's part of the, not part of the planning review process, but we've been trying to inform people again to help you get through the process more smoothly up front. So depending on if there has been existing electricity use, it's called the energy conservation plan, but really it is only addressing electricity. So the energy conservation plan comes into play if it's been an ongoing operation of any kind of agriculture or your residential use or anything else on the site, then there's a requirement for a 15% reduction or 15% offset of energy use from the historic energy use. So the worksheet gives you a way to figure that out. If you're the property owner and you've been the property owner and you've had records from a utility provider like Edison or PG&E, you'll have access to those records, and you can use the worksheet to fill that out and come up with a calculation where you can determine what that 15% offset requirement is going to be. And then there are different methods for you to achieve that 15% reduction. I think if you don't already have LED lighting in the facilities that are operating on site, you change out lighting. That's one big way where you can get a lot of energy or electricity savings in a pretty simple, straightforward way. Then there are other options as to how to achieve the offsets, whether you want to put in solar or other options. We have a couple of staff members in our community services department who are much more familiar with energy conservation measures. And so I think through Dennis's office, they'll be coordinating with community services and doing review of the energy conservation plans. There are also on that worksheet of resources, there's some grant programs that are out there for agricultural operators to get solar provided through grant money. So there's that, I think, is just going to be a living document. You know, as grant programs are available for a certain period of time, then they expire, then maybe something new comes up. But there are ways that you can use a menu of items to address that energy offset requirement. If it's a brand new operation and there has not been a history of electricity use on a site, then the offset has to be 100%. So it's significant that everything would either have to be through solar or some other electricity source, and or I think the option is that you can purchase through some of these community-sponsored programs that allow you to buy energy that is generated from renewable sources, and then it basically offsets in another way. But so there's a couple different ways to achieve it, but it's 15% offset if it's been an existing electricity demand, and then 100% if there has not been a historic electricity demand.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Ted Fox. I had a couple questions about the site security plan. Is it the county's intent, or was it the county's intent to have all employees live scanned?
Yes,
Okay,
all employees.
all right. In terms of the fencing and landscape, how much flexibility is the county willing to give?
None. No, sorry.
I kind of anticipated that.
Oh, whoopsie, every once in a while it slips out. I know.
How much flexibility is the county planning to give based on the nuances in topography for some of these growing sites? I mean, you've got, for instance, from a landscape plan, it's not supposed to be visible in 5 years.
Right. So you're talking about an outdoor or an open field cultivation
right,
site, or certainly that would be the ideal goal, but we recognize that obviously this county has a lot of topography, and so while you may be able to screen your site cultivation area from the roads right in front of your property, the public roads, there may be a public road that goes up the hill over there and it could be a mile away, and of course it's going to still be visible. So yes, we intend to be reasonable with that requirement, and we will recognize that there are areas that cannot be screened. But in terms of the immediate street frontages, we want to see a very good screening plan for those frontages that you can control public views from.
So in light of that, what about flexibility from a fencing standpoint? We happen to have a grow site that is in the traffic area of the wildlife going to the water hole.
The conflicts between fencing and wildlife habitat management are a challenge, I will say that.
Right.
And I think that we developed development standards that are in the ordinance now that address that issue, but we're going to have to rely on third-party biological expert reviews about what is a wildlife-friendly fencing that also meets the security plan requirements. So we recognize that there are conflicts between some of the regulations, and when you look at our codes, they always say whichever is the most protective of resources will prevail. So particularly for sites in the coastal zone,
Well, this is inland.
it's going to be probably weighted more toward wildlife. But when we have areas like tiger salamander habitat, and we've already come across that in some of our land use permit applications, we're going to have to look at those, and we're going to have to review the fencing plans, and we're going to have to try to meet two challenges. One, preserve wildlife corridors and to provide site security. So I'm sorry that I can't give you a better answer.
Where do you
I think it's
fall
site
in those
specific.
two?
It's site specific. We're going to have to look at each one, and look at the details of each particular site. So I'm sorry I can't answer it more clearly than that. It's why they take forever.
Especially got to watch out for those biped California tiger salamanders, because you got to raise the bottom of the fence like a whole 4 inches off the ground. So for the ones that walk on 2 legs. Questions? Let me check with Santa Maria again. Any questions in Santa Maria? Okay, go ahead. Remind us your name.
My name is Sienna Marie Sesma. And my question is in regards to lighting in greenhouses and hoop houses that are located in rural areas. And we know that the ordinance now states that there is no lighting. But through my clients, we've discovered that we can actually produce product using this less wattage and less power in 10,000 square feet than some indoor facilities in 16,000 square feet, or 16 square feet. So less usage in 10,000 versus more usage in 16. So we're just hoping that there could still be an open conversation about that ordinance.
I would respond that the prohibition against lighting in hoop structures is not solely about energy conservation. It's a lot about night lighting pollution, light pollution for nighttime, and electrical permits and that sort of thing. So the existing ordinance does not allow lighting in outdoor cultivation. Hoop structures are considered outdoor cultivation, therefore no lighting is allowed in hoop structures. And I'm sure many of you have been following the Planning Commission process to review hoop structures ordinance and look for an exemption for hoop structures in the future. Right now, they still require a land use permit. Depending on the size of the lot, it's either a land use permit up to 20, 25, or 30,000 square feet of development. Once you pass that threshold, depending on your lot size, then you're into the development plan requirement, which is a discretionary permit for hoop structures. That item goes back to the Planning Commission on Thursday, a special meeting, Thursday, October 11. If the Planning Commission takes action on that date, they will forward their recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. It would go before the Board of Supervisors in December. If the Board of Supervisors takes action, then it's 30 days later that the ordinance becomes effective. So if it goes down the path the way it looks like it's heading now, then hoop structures would be exempt from land use permits, provided they are less than 20 feet in height on a site. But that won't be until that ordinance becomes effective, and that's provided everything passes the way that the direction has been heading recently. But then in January, land use permits for hoop structures would no longer be needed, but it wouldn't change the fact that hoop structures cannot have lighting.
Okay. So with in kind of answering back to your question about the nightlight, and so if a grow facility is located where it just can't be seen because of the old trees around it, and it's just really buried in a rural area, after a site inspection by the various planners who are planning to come, and after they see that, is there still an opportunity for an open conversation about working with that particular client?
No. We will not entertain it. Because night
She
lighting,
had to get her no in, right?
You'd ask me again, but the answer is probably still no. The night lighting, it's not just humans seeing night lighting, but obviously it's a wildlife impact. We have owls and other raptors and other animals that need to get around in the dark at night, and that's their habitat in those rural areas in particular. So no, the night lighting in hoop structures is not allowed and is not open for conversation at this time.
Okay, thank you.
And there also would require generators typically in those super rural areas, which solar batteries, yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Hey guys, thank you so much. It's nice to see everybody here today. I have one point of clarification and then one question that Jackie and I have already addressed. So I actually got an email circulated earlier this week that the meeting that you mentioned was on the 11th is actually on the 3rd. So I just want to be clear, it is the 11th, right? I know it was just, I think, a standard email. I think that was the date before, but since you just brought it up, I want to clarify that hearing is on the 11th of
You're
October.
talking about the Planning Commission hearing on
the hoops? Yes, ma'am.
I'm fairly certain it's Thursday, October 11th.
Okay, yeah, I believe that's what they said in the last meeting, but I got an email last week that was contrary to that. So just in case anyone else got that note, I want to make sure that the people who are interested in participating, that's clear. So secondly, and the reason I was really here is understanding that we're still in flux, obviously, on the hoop structures, and that most of us who are with hoop structures are likely going to have more than 20,000 square feet of those hoop structures. And at this moment, I understand that does require a full development plan. So because we've been instructed and we're trying to be compliant, and I'm sure there's many other colleagues of mine that are in the same boat, if that particular process, naturally based on what I'm understanding from the county, can easily take 12 months, 24 months if there's an appeal, even when working in the best interest and trying to work within the framework. Once January 1st happens, assuming that the ordinance stays as is rather than is changed by the commission, how is the county going to address that sort of time difference between when we're no longer permitted to have temporaries and the realistic time frame it may take for somebody to work through the development plan process? Are we simply not going to be permitted to operate for a full year while we wait? Or is there some other mitigating circumstance in order to allow the farmers trying to be compliant to continue to earn a living and hire and pay their employees?
Right. So while we work with the state, we still are two separate entities that each has its own pathway for permitting or licensing.
Right.
So while the county works out its hoop ordinance, doesn't affect your ability to get your temporary licenses renewed or to get a provisional license from the state.
Okay, so that even in the non-coastal zone, the provisional would fall into place. So as long as we're in process, the county will effectively remain silent as long as we're not in any other reasonable, as long as we have any non-compliance some other way.
Yeah,
Is that the process?
Mostly, we have our enforcement priorities, and those
sure.
are if people are unlicensed from the state, or they're causing environmental damage, or they aren't ever going to be able to get a permit because they don't meet a certain setback from a school or something
Sure.
like that. So if there's conditions where somebody cannot get permitted, or that, like I said, they have no state license,
and flagrantly non-compliant,
so really non-compliant, those are at the top of our enforcement priorities. And sites where we're getting a lot of complaints, those also rise to the top of our enforcement priorities. But other sites that are operating, and granted they may not have a permit for all of their hoop structures, or their fence is too high or something like that, if we're not getting complaints, they're lower on our list. We're probably not going to get to them before these ordinances get in place.
Okay.
But when we do get complaints, we have to respond.
Okay, and that'll just obviously be on a complaint-by-complaint basis. But for the most part, if somebody's sort of compliant and just working through the process as close as they can be within the context of the law, you guys are going to stay quiet. Okay, thank you very much.
I mean, and there may be conditions where somebody has to take the tarps off. I mean, we're getting to the point in the year we recognize where harvest is going to happen, and if for outdoor cultivation sites, and from what I understand of cultivation, I'm not a farmer, that you may not want to plant again until late winter or early spring.
Yes.
And so maybe some people choose to take their tarp off their hoop structures, leave the structure components in place, but the plastic tarps come off, you preserve them, the rain gets into the ground, whatever other benefits may occur from that, and you may alleviate a violation for some period of time.
Right. Okay, understood. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Hassan Sadak. I just had a quick question about hoop structures. The first part was answered. The lighting stuff is apparently a complete no-go, but I'm wondering if that also excludes any sort of electrical wired to a hoop house. Like if we wanted to install any kind of fans for air circulation, is that completely excluded as well? Is it all power, or is it just lighting? Because I know the pollution was an issue, but also for running, like, for instance, light deprivation tunnels where we pull a black tarp over it, it cuts out all light. So we could pull a tarp at night, turn the lights on, and there would be no light pollution.
Right, but you're not allowed to have lights. But
at all. So that's why I was wondering if the reason that we couldn't have lights at all, if we can't have lights at all, is that because we're not allowed to wire electricity to the hoops?
No, it is not because you're not allowed to wire electricity. You may wire electricity to operate fans or any kind of heat if you needed something like that, but please get an electrical permit from the Building and Safety Division.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let me double check with Santa Maria again. Any questions at this point? Kind of winding down. Any more questions here in Santa Barbara? Yeah. Jay, if you were willing to venture, I did ask a question at the top of like, what are we missing here in terms of why we're at 40% of the folks that we already have licensed? You guys are doing stuff already. You have been for a while, and we're at 40% of that. What's going on? Hey, come over here, please. If you're willing to, I'd really be helpful.
Well, my main issue is, you know me personally, is the Cal Water Board, and Matt was nice enough to let me know that there's that meeting in Carpinteria tomorrow. So
Right.
hopefully I get my answer from them tomorrow, which that can help my process. But Cal
The water
Board is my
issue? Okay, water and well related issues. Okay, and this is including the fish and wild stuff, fish and wildlife with the stream diversion agreements. 8 or 10. Okay, very good. Jeez. Okay. All right. Yeah. So we will make that comment tomorrow as well at the workshop to make sure that this is really kind of cramping our style here. So. Yeah. Oh. So it's at 2 tomorrow at 2 o'clock in Carpinteria.
The California Water Board is hosting a workshop tomorrow afternoon from 2 to 4 at Carpinteria City Hall. And we'll be discussing, there'll be a panel of different presenters from the regional board, the state water board. I'll be there, staff from City of Carpinteria. And then they're going to break out and they'll do a short presentation, like maybe half an hour or something, maybe an hour, I don't know. And then have breakout tables where individuals can come and talk to the employees from those different agencies about water resources, about permitting and everything. So we'll have different tables and stations so people can get one-on-one question and answer done there. So 2 to 4 tomorrow at Carpinteria City Hall, sponsored by the State Water Resources Control Board.
So Jay, did you have some insights?
Yeah, no, thank you for asking the question, because we oftentimes industry and regulators have to have a back and forth about how to coexist and work through some challenging things, new legislation being this particular tough one. I tell my clients it can take 6 months to get a permit for a house. We've had house-related regulations on the books for many, many years, and so this is a brand new set of laws and procedures. So just pulling together materials that are on that laundry list of requirements for a CUP, I tell people it takes 2 or 3 months. Many people don't have a title report. They have to figure out what that is and how to get it paid for, and there's biological reports that are now part of the state regulations that are being referenced to licensees, temp license holders about getting a wildlife survey, and that takes a while. There's not that many people that do those that are on that list here. Certainly getting a property surveyed for boundaries and topography is a process that takes a minimum of 6 weeks. So you have to start with the survey before you can then plot everything, figure out where everything's going. So it just takes 90 days really to get it all packaged together. So it can then be longer too if some people don't know what they want to do yet with the property. Where do you want to grow? Well, everywhere. Okay. So.
Okay. Other things that we should know about why it's taken so long for you guys to come in? Yes. I'm sorry. I hate to make you get up and make the two other people get up too, but it's helpful, I think, for everybody here.
Statement's just pretty much hoops. If you have 22,000 square feet of hoops, I can't come in and comply. And even if I wanted to, and you have an exemption on the books in a month from now, why would I come in and pay 22,000 square feet of greenhouses and but I think in North County, specifically, almost everyone's in hoops, and there's no clear path on that.
Okay. So you're hanging out, waiting, hoping the exemption happens, and then okay. Good to know. All right. I thought maybe we made everybody mad or sad, and you all wanted to go away somewhere else, like to Slow or something. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? So I want to just acknowledge one more meeting that's coming up. and that is, you may have gotten an email from CDFA. There's a meeting about appellation, establishing appellation criteria across the state for cannabis. I would just encourage you to think about participating in that about that meeting. I think from an economic standpoint, I mentioned the need for local distributor, local testing. I think a local brand identity that would come with an appellation designation of Santa Barbara County would be a huge plum for us. And if you think so too, I would encourage you to go to the CDFA website. I think the meeting's going to be up in Lompoc in a couple of weeks. It's on the CDFA website. But I would encourage you to consider participating actively in that process of designating, thinking about what would be the criteria for identifying an appellation, let's say Santa Barbara County. So I think, again, that would be a real positive aspect for the local industry. Yeah.
Is there anything in place, or can there be anything put in place then to leverage all of this good work that all of the farmers and businesses in this room, such as yourselves, are doing to make this not just something that makes Santa Barbara money from a license perspective, but also makes it part of the tourist destination?
Yes. So I said yes that time. Did you notice that? I didn't say no like I said all the other times. Yeah. So I think part of what was just shared for the folks in Santa Maria was, is there something we can proactively do in terms of brand identity and looking forward to how do we market this? And I'm gonna push back and I'm gonna say yes, and I wanted to challenge industry to come together to do that together, okay? And I don't, not to get ourselves out of that, I want to encourage it in whatever way, but I think the most successful opportunities we're going to have for creating brand identity and for actually the economic security of this industry locally. Yes, I agree. Okay? That's really the bottom line is in that branding and brand identity. I was asked recently in an interview about what's kind of the vision for cannabis in Santa Barbara County, and I said world domination. I said that off the record because some people might take that the wrong way. Actually, most everybody except for the people in this room would take that the wrong way. But I do think, this is an opportunity that the board and this community and you as an industry and neighbors are all interested in seeing being done well, not being done poorly. And if that's the case, then we ought to derive some larger benefit from that. And I think that the larger benefit of that is being known as leaders in this industry, of being recognized for that. And then, if some people make some money on the side, yay. I think that's all good. So but I want to put that challenge back really on marketing appellations, and I really want to put it on you. I don't feel like it's my role to come forward and say, hey, yeah, I think we ought to have a Santa Barbara County brand, but. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. They're local, yeah. So we can connect it with the tourist boards, the TBID groups and whatnot. And I think, then that comes to the question about a larger economic development plan for the county, frankly, which is something that the reason why Stephen's here is so I can start working on the economic development plan for the county. So it's a bigger piece. Yeah. Yeah. And we can do that. We can talk. So we'll talk about more coordination. So with that, thank you very, very much for coming. Thanks for watching online. Thanks for coming to Santa Maria and being a part of the process. And as need be, we'll do one of these again. So thank you very, very much.
You heading back? How you doing over there? You park over there or what? Use the exit. You go out this way. I've been. interesting meeting, huh? Yeah. It's a little bit of everything.